This is Unfilter, episode 290 for August 8th, 2018.
Why, I'm divorced from it now. I see it from a distance. I give myself a divorce. I say, George, emotionally you have no stake in this. You don't care one way or another. So watch it. Have fun. You know what? I say it this way. When you're born in this world, you're given a ticket to the freak show. And when you're born in America, you're given a front row seat. And some of us get to sit there with notebooks. And I'm a notebook gunner, huh? Oh my God, did you see that? Did you see what he just... And I watch the freak show, and I get my notes, and I make up stuff about it, and I talk about the freaks. And the freaks are all humans, and they're like me, and they're all the same. We're all the same. I'm not better, I'm not different. I'm just apart now. I'm separate. I'm over here because I put myself out of the mix. I don't have a stake in the outcome. I'm not a cheerleader.
I was actually going to let that roll for a little bit, the music, you know?
Yeah.
Just kind of let it marinate for a bit.
It is a good song.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Unfilter, Jupiter Broadcasting's, well, it used to be weekly show about the news you shouldn't be watching. I'm Chase Nunes.
Hey, buddy.
And I'm going to give you guys my full name because over there, been with this guy since episode number 1, Mr. Chris Fisher.
Yeah.
2 studios, 3 different soundboards, different sound effects.
A few co-hosts.
Two presidents.
Yeah. And gigs, and actually terabytes and terabytes of clips later.
You know, I guess the one thing, well, there's many things maybe I regret, but one of the things I regret in regards to this show is we never did anything live on remote somewhere.
Oh, you're right. We always did want to do that.
Yeah, we've done it from the studio, either here or we've done it from the old JBHQ. We've done a few remote shows.
If
But
we
here
were
we are.
if we were ever going to do a revisit to the show down the road,
Yeah.
we should do it live on location,
Yeah.
just to honor that. Because you're right, we both wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So this is the last episode of the Unfilter show, and what we decided to do was make the product that you've always wanted to listen to. So we're going to break down the week's news. We're going to thank you guys. We're going to do a high note, and we're going to do an overtime.
And we'll talk about like possible. I hate doing this part, talking about, well, you know, you never know, maybe, you know.
Yeah, you never know what
we don't want to
Christians-
give anybody false hopes on anything. That being said, I don't. Hey, now, thank you. However, I don't think this will be the last that you'll hear.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
Yeah?
Because obviously, while the show may stop,
Yeah?
the machine, a political machine, the media
Yeah,
machine keeps
I
on
agree.
turning.
Yeah, and
there's going to be huge things I know coming up that
Yeah.
may need our opinions.
And there is always word of a new community show that may be in the works from people you know. So if you stay subscribed, you never know what could happen down the road.
I mean, something might just drop in the feed one day, and you'll be like, what's that?
You never know.
You never know.
You just.
The more you know.
Dude, you're on point
I know.
today.
I know. It only took me 290 to get it right. I mean, seriously.
All right, what do you think? Should we start things off with a little cyber?
ASL.
Now, this was a story that was brewing as we went on the air last week because it is the scariest thing that has ever happened to the United States of America, if you ask the media.
They almost look like plastic toys, but experts insist so-called ghost guns can be very lethal. 9 state attorneys general and Senate Democrats have tried to block this man, Cody Wilson, from posting free 3D printer instructions online. Late today, a federal judge agreed to an injunction.
Now, we covered this story when it first broke, I feel like more than 4 years ago, but I might be wrong on that. That's just from memory. So apparently, the federal government has become aware of the fact that in the future, you'll be able to print any fucking thing you want.
Make no mistake about it. This is the doing of the Trump administration. This is part of a long pattern of...
You see, because Donald Trump is such a leader in the economy, when he came into office, he caused such a level of innovation in technology that 3D guns became a reality in the last year.
Is this the same as the Al Gore inventing the internet moment?
I feel like Trump should run with this.
So Trump has invented 3D guns.
Yeah. Well,
right.
No, you got to go big picture.
Oh.
Printing.
Oh, 3D printing.
Letting the gun lobby get whatever they want.
This morning, President Trump tweeted, "I am looking into 3D plastic guns being sold to the public. Already spoke to the NRA. Doesn't seem to make much sense."
I do have one side.
That's always his take. Why would we want to give people access to information?
But let me talk to the NRA. Like, why does that matter? You're the president of the freaking United States, man.
I just feel like
you don't have to check with anybody.
It just seems so anti-intellectual to me. Like, here we are, and really, are we going to do this? So, hey, Chase.
Yeah, Chris.
If we were to go like way back in time.
All right.
I'm not suggesting anybody should do this because it can cause indigestion, but.
Oh, there's some cobwebs in here.
So here we are at the beginning of the printing press.
Yeah.
I gotta warn you.
Yeah.
Grandma's secret recipe is gonna get printed and shared with thousands of people.
You can't share Grandma's secret recipe.
No. Hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people will learn of Grandma's secret pie recipe.
Well, I'm gonna call Ballard 67252 and make sure that no one gets this.
Now, of course, all of us as computer enthusiasts, I would assume, listening to the show, or maybe you've charged your device recently, or perhaps you even have one of them fancy electric cars that have to charge off the grid.
Yeah.
Well, then you're probably very displeased to learn that Vladimir Putin is personally out to screw you.
I knew Putin was going to get tied into this somehow.
Our digital enemies are taking advantage of all of us.
Ah, crap.
They are exploiting our open society to steal, to...
Our open society. That's a trigger word, by the way. That's a George Soros trigger word.
Open society?
I feel like, though she's not using it that way, we're trying to rebrand. We reuse like cyber. Cyber used to be a joke. Like, what do you usually say when I say, let's start with cyber?
ASL.
Because it's a joke.
Right. It's funny.
Cyber used to mean two people masturbating online, telling each other
hey
sexy
baby,
things.
you want a cyber.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But now we've repurposed cyber to mean cyber. I mean, how would you define cyber?
The internets, the people
Protection
on the interconnection
of electronic systems.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so you rebrand these things like open society, and you are essentially de-weaponizing the term.
Yep.
And you're reintroducing it to society as something else.
Right.
Especially when you have the platform of, say, Homeland Security.
You're trying to own your own term.
Yeah.
Basically.
And say you're Krista Nielsen of Homeland Security, and let's just say for a moment you're the Homeland Security Secretary, and you start throwing these terms around, you sort of create a new normal.
Our digital enemies are taking advantage of all of us. They are exploiting our open society to steal, to manipulate.
It's interesting that she has her eyes closed, don't you think?
Does she not believe what she's saying?
Isn't that... Well, no. I mean, she must if she can say it with her eyes closed. She believes it so hard she doesn't have to read the prompter.
Ooh.
But it's...
She's tired. Maybe. She's just getting a quick rest.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
To intimidate, to coerce, to disrupt, and to undermine. We are in a crisis mode. The Cat 5 hurricane has been forecast.
Wait, networking?
I know, right?
Need some Cat 5 here.
If we were in a crisis right now,
like... wait. I thought we already were in a crisis.
So I would define a crisis as you and I are sitting here doing the show, and you get a call from your wife that your house is on fire.
That's a crisis.
That is a crisis.
Super crisis.
Would you come on air and say, well, guys, I know this is the last episode, but I must depart early because I am currently experiencing a crisis. Right? No. I mean, either she is super medicated or she is not actually all that worried about what she is saying.
This is her fifth speech of the day.
Yeah, right? She said it 10 times.
Yeah. To coerce, to disrupt, and to undermine. We are in a crisis mode. The Cat 5 hurricane has been forecast, and now we must prepare.
That, of course, was Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen.
Well, that really gets me fired up. I'm super worried, you see.
Oh, yeah.
So the news of the day is that Russia is going after our power grid, Chase. They're going after our power grid. This is according to a journalist at Axios who says that they're going to Russia is going to give us, right before the election, mark their words, a crippling cyber
Well,
attack.
I'm happy, though, that our electric grids are not connected to the internet, right? Because, I mean, who in their right mind would connect a utility to the internet?
There's literally no reason to do so.
I mean, so we're good, right?
They have this capability to shut down, to cause blackouts in cities, to disrupt, as you said, critical infrastructure.
I mean, imagine if the power went out in the state of Maine in the month of January.
Imagine.
If I could only imagine.
Imagine if my blouse fell off.
All the lives that could be at risk. I know that you interviewed a few top intelligence officials and specifically asked which global threat worried them the most. What is keeping them up at night?
You love that line.
Oh, God. Imagine if I punch this guy in his
Hey,
throat right
if your
now.
phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, what are you going to do?
What is keeping you up at night?
What is keeping you up at night? That line.
I hate that.
That triggered you just now. Just boom, triggered.
It really does.
Play it again.
Asked which global threat worried them the most. What is keeping them up at night?
Yeah.
Let's keep them up.
Right, so this is former CIA directors of national intelligence, top White House advisors on national security. We asked all of them, what's the biggest threat? And more than half said a massive cyber attack. David Petraeus compared it to the weapon of mass destruction of cyber attacks, and he referenced this idea of tampering with the electric grid and causing prolonged blackouts that will put lives at risk.
Cyber, dude.
I feel it's a huge can of hot air because
our only hope
we haven't really seen this.
Our only hope is that the Space Force takes off.
Space Force.
If the Space Force takes off, that's going to be way more of an industrial complex bonanza.
This was in a Mirror Universe, right? Episode where the Space Force was created.
Space Force. It's coming, man. It's coming. Now, there are our top national security advisors that are warning about Russia's influence. And the way I read this as a very concerted effort by everyone in the Trump administration, except for Donald Trump, to come out and take a strong stance about Russia.
Tonight from America's top national security and intelligence officials, a united front, vowing to protect U.S. elections against a new round of threats from Russia and other adversaries.
We acknowledge the threat. It is real. It is continuing. And we're doing everything we can to have a legitimate election that the American people can have trust in.
That's Dan Coates, the Director of National Security.
Whom, by the way, I thought the president doesn't agree with.
Just 3 months ahead of the midterms, the officials detailing a pervasive Russian campaign to try to weaken and divide the U.S.
Make no mistake, the scope of this foreign influence threat is both broad and deep.
That wet blanket is our FBI director.
Our democracy itself is in the crosshairs.
Though the official...
Oh! So this is big. And what this really is super strong messaging by the Trump administration that Russia is a threat.
But then
there's a question that gets raised. And I'll ask you, if you recognize, what's the way to put this? Similarity is the word that's coming to mind, but I don't feel like it's quite descriptive enough. Tell me if this feels like an echo from the past.
All right.
Consistent.
Last week, I want to turn to Russia if we could. Last week, you were among the top national security officials who...
This is, of course, Jake Tapper interviewing...
Mr. Walrus.
Yeah, John Bolton.
Last week, I want to turn to Russia if we could. Last week, you were among the top national security officials who came out to the White House briefing room to make a show of force to speak directly about the Russia election interference threat, how it continues today. President Trump has not been able to do the same thing, not in front of the world when he was in Helsinki, not since, not at any of his rallies, not when the press is in front of him, not on Twitter. Why not? Why can't President Trump condemn Russian election interference with the same vociferousness that you're able to?
Now, imagine you are in a universe that just keeps repeating itself over and over again. You remember that TNG episode where they crash into Fraser's ship?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then they have to look for things that feel like
the
deja
little
vu.
the little echoes and,
Yeah.
and then they leave clues like data left the 3, right? The third option thing. Right.
Good job, man.
Yeah, I remember.
So the deja vu that I'm getting from this is, do you remember the incessant demands from Fox News for President Obama to condemn Muslim extremism?
Oh, yeah. And they're like, see, look, he must be, yep.
Why won't President Obama condemn Muslim extremism? Now, with that in mind, re-listen to Jake Tapper's questions.
Of his rallies, not when the press is in front of him, not on Twitter. Why not? Why can't President Trump condemn Russian election interference with the same vociferousness that you're able to?
Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah.
Isn't that it is the other side exactly repeating the patterns of the opposite side, the last president.
Right. And then they go and say, well, the last person did it, so then the last person does it. And
do
then,
you think it's conscious, or do you think they don't even realize they're doing it?
I think it's just a normal political playbook maneuver.
It is. It's a play.
It's a play, and it doesn't matter what party it is. It's the same play.
Look, that's simply inaccurate. The president has on multiple occasions, and I'd be glad to give you a list so that you could see it, said that he agrees that the Russians have meddled in the elections in the past and that he's worried about it in the future. And I might say the very fact that I and the four of the heads of the operating department and agencies charged with detecting and preventing Russian meddling.
I'll stop him right here. Today, the Trump administration introduced new sanctions again against Russia for the poisoning in London.
So this confuses me because I thought the previous sanctions, while yes, they were implemented or they were introduced,
they were also in response to that poisoning.
Right, but they were never implemented. So, right? I thought they were never implemented.
Well, no, what it was, yeah, you're right. Well, kind of. What it was is that a couple of businesses got really fucking fatty exceptions.
And the Space Force got an exception on this new one too.
Yes, exactly.
It's true. Yeah.
So they keep writing exceptions to these otherwise super tough sanctions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't want this to overshadow Don's wonderful son.
Feeling the heat.
Even though it's 110 degrees in this crazy room.
It's so warm. Actually, let's be fair.
They are warm.
Could the oldest member of your family perform at this level in a room that's 110 degrees?
No.
Barely could. It would take, as a mid-30s man who's been doing this for about almost 15 years, I could barely do that. Barely. And here is a man in his 70s.
It speaks to what Ronnie Jackson says, the former doctor to the president, that he is in top physical peak condition.
Obviously.
As
proved by this clip.
Right.
Feeling the heat.
Even though it's 110 degrees in this crazy room.
So hot.
Saturday night at a sweltering Ohio rally, the president raised alarm over ongoing election interference.
We got to stop meddling. We got to stop everybody from attacking us. But there are a lot. Russia's there. China's there.
But by this morning, he was running a fever on Twitter.
You see what she did there?
The prescription for that fever? More tweets.
Oh, I thought it was cowbell.
Yeah, denying a news report as a complete fabrication, that I am concerned about the meeting my wonderful son Donald had in Trump Tower. That June 2016 meeting included a Kremlin-linked Russian lawyer and lobbyist, along with the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and then campaign chairman Paul Manafort. But today, the president changed his story, dropping the earlier claim that Russian adoption policy had been the focus. This was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally legal. He adds, I did not know about it.
Now, when we first heard about this, it was a meeting about Russian adoptions.
Yep.
Then it was I knew nothing about it. Then it was I dictated a few things. I acknowledge, the story has shifted a few times.
A few.
But I feel like all of this is, literally not new. He, during a press conference with France's president a year ago, a clip in which we played on this very show, admitted it was a meeting to get information about an opponent, and he says, which happens all the time. And he kind of does one of these hand gestures that he's famous for. That was a year ago. I don't understand how this stuff that happens about 11 months ago.
Then why change the stories back and forth? Why focus?
I don't disagree. There was some obfuscation or dissemblies, as they used to say with Obama. Some dissembling happened.
You mean
here.
No kind of collusion with the Russian government to get information?
Well, I agree. They were trying to meet intentionally with a Russian representative to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that is what tried to happen.
No, I thought this was about Russian adoptions. Now I'm completely confused. Yeah, I know.
We may need some faith healers.
I feel better. Thanks. Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I thought here's what actually has made me exhausted doing the show is that stuff comes up. It's on a cycle. It comes back up like my girlfriend's bad mood. Every month, it comes back up. You know,
right,
and I'm like, wait, you were doing great. Oh,
flashback.
Yeah, exactly. So this is to me a non-story, but yet it's in the cycle again. It's like one of the things they go to in the cycle.
Well, I think it's part of the reason because it feels like the impression is that the story is always changing and always going back to we knew it wasn't about adoption, and now we have confirmation. Yeah, it definitely wasn't. And even the president tweeted straight about it. You know, so it's like, what's up now? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand. And there's a lot going on. If you think about it right now, if you put yourself in the mindset of Bill Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You could make an argument that you were pretty distracted back then, right?
I'm very distracted.
There's a lot going on when you're dealing with this legal scandal, and you're trying to run the country, right?
I'm trying not to be impeached.
Right, exactly. So think about Trump here for a second. So not only is he, quote unquote, trying to run the country, quote unquote, and depending on who you ask, trying to run the world as the world's most powerful man, quote unquote, but he's dealing with the Manafort trial.
Yeah.
He's dealing with the Cohen crap.
Yeah.
He's dealing with the Stormy Daniels crap.
Yeah.
He's dealing with the Russia investigation crap.
Yeah.
And trying to run the country.
Yeah. And work on his golf game.
Of course. Every weekend.
And during the week.
And maybe grab some pee. So it's a lot going on. So that's why the developments in the Manafort case really matter.
Rick Gates back on the stand, admitting during a harsh cross-examination to having an extramarital affair a decade ago.
So Rick Gates made a deal, which we'll get into here in a moment. He made a deal. And so part of that deal is he's got to be honest. And if he wants the FBI to honor this deal, when he's under oath, he's got to be honest about it.
He's got to be straight up. Yeah.
So Manafort's lawyers have been waiting all week to go after this guy.
Yeah.
Cross-examination. Yeah. And so they get their opportunity to cross-examine this guy. And they expose not one affair, which was the main one.
I know, but
4 different affairs this guy had going on while being married, all to just embarrass and discredit him.
And he also goes on, I don't know if you have a clip on this, to admit that not only he stole all this money, he stole it from Manafort too.
Yeah.
Harsh cross-examination to having an extramarital affair a decade ago, but denying accusations by Paul Manafort's lawyer that he was embezzling money from Manafort in order to fund his affair, and what the defense attorney referred to as a secret life in London and elsewhere. Gates also testified today that 2 weeks after Donald Trump's election, Paul Manafort recommended that his banker, Stephen Koch, become Secretary of the Army. Koch allegedly loaned Manafort money under false pretenses. Gates detailed how broke Manafort was when he joined the Trump campaign in March 2016, working at the time for no salary. Gates said that Manafort's consulting firm had no clients then, and that they were at the time trying to secure another political consulting contract in Ukraine, but had not yet been able to. In a 2015 email exchange, Manafort was clearly frustrated. WTF, Manafort wrote to Gates. How could I be blindsided like this, Manafort said. This after learning that taxes he was due to pay were much higher than he had anticipated. Gates admitted that he also supplied false information to banks in order to help Manafort secure bank loans. Gates testified that Manafort made more than $5 million between 2011 and 2012, doing consulting work for a Ukrainian billionaire. Gates went into detail about how shell companies were used to move money into hidden accounts in Cyprus. In one instance, according to Gates, a payment supported lobbying in the United States. Gates stated that Manafort reported some of the payments to U.S. tax officials as loans, though they were, in fact, income, adding that Manafort was, quote, trying to decrease his taxable income. Prosecutors demonstrated that Manafort directed these activities through emails. There were hundreds of these, Gates said in court, adding, quote, typical practice was Mr. Manafort would send me a list of wire requests. Gates admitted that he used information provided by Manafort to create invoices for fake amounts of money for wire transfers. But the money never actually went to the vendors. Instead, it went to the banks. The purpose of this, according to Gates, so that the wire transfers would not be recorded on U.S. business records. Nonetheless, on Monday, the prosecutors elicited testimony from Mr. Gates and from one of Mr. Manafort's accountants that tied Manafort more closely to Russia. The accountant, Cindy Laporta, testified that in 2006, Mr. Manafort received a $10 million loan from Oleg Deripaska, a Russian oligarch close to President Vladimir Putin.
That's his Russia tie. But otherwise, it's actually all really about what he did in Ukraine and the work he did. And the reason why this story matters is not because of the Russia investigation or even really Manafort's work in the Trump campaign, although that is how the media will play it. But if you're inside the swamp, what this really is it is a public posting of a business model that Manafort created. It's a public killing of that business model. It is a message being sent to other sons of bitches, just like Manafort, that we're on to how this works now, and we're cracking down. And if you go against us when we're trying to topple a regime, we will destroy you. That is the message. That's why Manafort has been put in solitary confinement. That's why what was the indictment? Something like 20 people around Manafort are also getting screwed.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. It's about the devastation of a business model, which is good. And it's also a signal. It's a message. And so when you look at the quote unquote secret life of Manafort, you realize that it's all about keeping under the radar. Guys like Manafort succeeded because nobody knew their name. Nobody knew who they were.
So then why did he get involved with the campaign? If he's trying to stay under the radar, it's like he would probably never have come to light if he didn't get in the campaign.
So this requires probably more than we could go into. But so the reason why he got involved with the Trump campaign is he was essentially out of clients. His business with Ukraine had been stopped once we overthrew that government. Once what's her face and what's their face?
Fuck the EU.
Once we overthrew that government and his guy was out of power, his contract was done.
Yeah.
And so he was out of work. And so they, along with Trump, had a couple of other leads that they were investigating. And to put it bluntly, there was a cow with a lot of cash that they could milk.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that Gates did were checks that were written by the Trump campaign. So some of the things that Gates bought were bought with Trump campaign money.
Wow.
That's so it's a super fascinating story. I'll have some additional links on Unfilter.show/290.
The key to the special counsel's case, Rick Gates, says that the Mueller team told him if he cooperated, flipped, testified against Paul Manafort, they'd be okay with a sentence of probation for initially lying to the feds. But that if he didn't, he could face 290 years in prison. So the Mueller team, Gates testified, prepped him for more than 20 hours.
So they come at him with essentially 300 years of prison time, or you work with us. And then when they work with him, they prep him for 20 hours on how to answer these questions.
Yeah.
To test.
Well, it's kind of like the old Catch Me If You Can. We can put you away for 30 years for check fraud, or you work with us in the FBI in the financial crimes.
And it always works, right? Especially if you got kids, you got a wife, you got a life.
Well, and he's trying to preserve his beard.
I know
he just shaved the beard.
Yeah,
so,
that beard's worth more than Manafort.
Absolutely.
So the Mueller team, Gates testified, prepped him for more than 20 hours to testify against his old boss. But as soon as the Manafort defense lawyers started asking Gates questions, they got him to admit that he's led a secret life in London, which included a girlfriend, not his wife, and a rented flat. Gates then testified he would figure out ways to trick Paul Manafort into paying his personal American Express bill, and that it's possible he may have fraudulently submitted personal expenses to be paid by the Trump inaugural committee. The Manafort defense team believes they have exposed the Mueller team's star as unreliable. That's why Manafort lawyer Kevin Downing asked, after all the lies you've told and fraud you have committed, you expect this jury to believe you? And Gates said, I am here to tell the truth and take responsibility for my actions. Mr. Manafort had the same path. I am here. I have accepted responsibility, and I am trying to change.
I bet he is.
I bet he is too. Abso-freaking-lutely.
300 years in prison being hung over his head.
Yeah.
I bet. The issue I have is, again, none of that has anything to do with Putin's chess. It's about money. It's about Ukraine. It's got nothing.
Not paying taxes.
Yeah. It's got nothing to do with collusion. It's got nothing to do with Russia. And when I look at real collusion, and I know that's just saying this makes me sound like a partisan, but it's genuinely just as I see it, the facts. We now know, thanks to some new released documents last week, that the FBI, so here's the order of custody. A Republican camp begins to pay for the Steele dossier. Then when they're done, after they decided to raise the white flag and just bend over to Donald Trump, then they hand it off. And a law firm on behalf of Clinton and the DNC takes up the Steele dossier and begins paying Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS for his work. And then when they're done, there's now a new client that we know about who picked up the tab and continued to pay Christopher Steele to continue to do his work as far as into November of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, here's the weird thing. It's the FBI.
The FBI has released 71 pages of alleged correspondence between the Bureau and Christopher Steele, the former British spy who authored a dossier alleging collusion between Donald Trump and Russia. The records show FBI payments to Steele as a confidential human source over an unknown period. They also show that Steele told the FBI he had informed a third party he was acting as a source for the Bureau. However, the document is mostly empty, with important information removed, so much so that it almost looks like a blank form. And it follows the FBI's release of documents on former Trump advisor Carter Page, with most of the text heavily redacted in that too. Let's cross live now to investigative journalist Max Blumenthal for his take. Hi, Max, good to have you on the show. Why is the FBI releasing these documents so heavily redacted? What's the point in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, these documents aren't heavily redacted. They're completely whited out. It's a literal whitewash. I mean, in this 71-page file, there's more white than at a Coldplay concert or the Republican National Convention. It is all white. It's shocking, really.
The
two things they acknowledge, the FBI acknowledges, is that it was paying Christopher Steele until November 1st, 2016. So first of all, James Comey, who was the director of the FBI at the time, has feigned ignorance about who was paying Christopher Steele. So
yeah, that's one thing. Like Comey, when he was up there testifying, was like, I don't know. But they were paying. The FBI was paying until November.
That's interesting. And number two, it acknowledges that Steele's contract was terminated because he had been the source for an article by Michael Isikoff, which was specifically designed to get the word out about the Steele dossier so it could be dropped after Trump's election.
And what's even weirder, so the FBI fires him, essentially, for talking to the press, but then the FBI uses the story that's created by those leaks to justify, in part, the FISA tap on Trump Tower.
Right.
So if he hadn't leaked it, all they would have is the dossier.
Right.
But because they had a news article that made the dossier seem legitimate, they were able to get that FISA warrant.
Right.
But if he hadn't
cross-reference,
if he hadn't leaked, they wouldn't be able to refer to that news story to get the FISA warrant. Isn't that weird?
It's very weird, the order of operations.
Specifically designed to get the word out about the Steele dossier so it could be dropped after Trump's election.
Apologies to any people of color who are Coldplay fans, of course. How do you expect, tell me, President Trump to react to this release? He's been claiming this was a political hit job against his campaign from day one.
Yeah, I mean, this is, well, despite the complete redaction, it does confirm part of Trump's narrative that the FBI was colluding with the Clinton campaign, because we also know that Christopher Steele had been employed through Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm, and the contract was taken out by Perkins Coie, which was the law firm of Hillary Clinton's campaign. So this shows a clear case of collusion between the FBI, directed by James Comey, and the Clinton campaign. And another thing we know is that Christopher Steele continued supplying information to the FBI after his contract with the FBI was terminated, through Bruce Orr, an FBI official who is married to a staffer at Fusion GPS. It's very embarrassing for people who are trying to prove Trump-Russia collusion.
So even after they fired Steele, they continued to get information through a Fusion GPS partner, a marital partner, who was married to an FBI person. I would love to just, again, I'm going to do this in the overtime too. I just would love to create space here for a moment. If you were to remove yourself from the election, if you were to remove yourself from the Russia investigation, if you were to remove yourself from Donald Trump's Twitter feed, and you just sat here in a vacuum, and somebody dropped on you that two different FBI agents, a man and a woman, texted about colluding in Andy's office about preventing Donald Trump from becoming president, and that information that the Clinton campaign financed through a law firm was used to wiretap Donald Trump so that way they could collect dirt on him, and that the FBI director was in on all of it, as well as his lieutenant, Peter Strzok. If you just received all of this information in a vacuum, this would be, in itself, just the dossier and the FBI's involvement and the Clinton campaign's involvement in itself would be one of the largest scandals in the history of our nation. And in today's climate, it's just part of the news cycle. It's just one of the many items we're talking about.
Well, it's because what is considered outrageous is always superseded by something else that's just as outrageous.
It's fascinating.
It's like the Gem song, Truly Outrageous, right? I mean, gosh.
I believe at some point, like I hope it's years from now. I hope it's maybe even a president or two down the road. I hope a future version of me comes back and re-downloads the entire show and listens to this entire progression.
Well,
with the hindsight of 5 or 10 years.
Well, that's the cool thing about this show, where it is a digital time capsule where you're able to go back and see what happened 3-4 years ago. You know, we're talking about election night or whatever, and just watch how everything will repeat itself, probably in 5 to 10 years' time, but with opposite parties again. We will see this kind of thing. If it's not Russia, it's going to be a different country. I hope this needs to stop overall, but gosh.
I believe and I hope that over 290 episodes, we've created a model in which the audience can view events and view news and listen to politicians and listen to news presenters, and they can critically analyze and think about what they're saying.
The thing you got to be careful about in doing that is putting yourself in your own confirmation bias and bubble.
Right.
You know,
I hope that's what I'm saying is I hope this show helped people get outside of that a little bit.
I mean, so far, I mean, I know you're keeping track at home. We've had a Fox clip.
Yeah.
We've had an MSNBC clip.
Yep.
I believe we've had a CNN clip, and we've had an RT clip.
And we've also had an NBC.
Straight NBC. So it's one of those things where, yes, you can look at all those media sources, but you also, look outside of them. Look at alternative media. And I know you can get extreme fringes on both sides, but you got to get well informed on this stuff.
I feel like as this show is wrapping, we are on the precipice of a real dichotomy, like a fork in the road. You can be subject to the ultimate confirmation bias of humanity's history, where you can be trapped in a social bubble, you can be trapped in a Google curated news bubble. You can really get inside next level, like inception level confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, if you're willing to be brave enough, if you're willing to challenge what makes you comfortable, you can also get access to information that's way outside of your normal radar.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fascinating contrast.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, in doing this show and always trying to keep up to date on what's happening in our news and current events, you see it. I mean, I was watching, last night I was watching CNN and their quote-unquote wall-to-wall breaking news coverage of these midterm things.
You know, they finally got over the fact that Jim Acosta had a hard time at one Trump rally.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I mean, I don't even want to go down that path and talking about...
Dude, I get more shit from Mac users when I go to a tech event.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are some passionate people that, and rightfully so, the media has shown their bias at times. And
CNN's really been kind of a crap show.
Yeah, yeah. Some people on CNN. I wouldn't say all of them.
Yeah, well, no, I'd say all of them.
I love Anderson. Who? I'm sorry.
Anderson?
Anderson's my favorite. No,
I don't know.
I'm messing with you, man.
Here's the thing about Anderson, man, is he sounds like he's on heroin or something.
You sound like you're on heroin or something. What?
You've been waiting to use that clip. You've been holding on for 290 episodes.
Oh my gosh, it's Anderson.
There you go.
Two of them, dude. I
know.
All right, so Michael Cohen has been singing like an opera singer about all of the truths. And so you must have been wondering, while he's singing, they must be applying some kind of leverage to really get him to go. Well, it turns out, just as you likely suspected, they're using the Al Capone leverage.
The feds are investigating President Trump's former fixer for tax fraud. That's according to our corporate cousins at the Wall Street Journal. Michael Cohen is already facing other possible legal trouble for hush money payments to women before the 2016 election. Cohen has admitted that he gave $130,000 to porn star Stormy Daniels. He claims she had sex with President Trump a decade before he took office. The president denies it. Now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the feds are also interested in whether Michael Cohen underreported income from his taxi business.
What?
On his tax returns.
A taxi business underreported its taxes?
Oh, my God.
No!
Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis, tells Fox News that he can't respond because of the ongoing investigation. So, as we learn of possible legal trouble, more of it for Cohen, will the former fixer flip on his ex-boss? There's a new question. Bob Bianchi's here. He's a criminal.
I would say he already has. When he releases the tapes, he's flipped. That's how you know he's flipped. When the tapes get released, he's flipped. All right, Mr. Nunes, what do you want? You want to keep moving along? There's so many things. Peter Strzok is in the news this week. We'll have some of that in the overtime. So if you want to know more about what he's in the news for, that'll be in the overtime. But your really good buddy who says crazy crap is in the news.
Oh.
And
well, I got a lot of good friends, so
I feel like this is the worst possible thing to come up for episode 290 because now I'm in the position of having to defend fucking Alex Jones.
Oh, no, I thought it was going to be Adam Schiff. My bad.
Is making up a heinous lie about tragic deaths something you can be sued for, or is it covered by freedom of speech? That's an issue being litigated in a case in which the parents of a child killed in the 2012 massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School are suing InfoWars host Alex Jones for defamation for his repeated claims that the massacre is a hoax. Here's a sampler of Jones's assertions that the family finds actionable.
All right. I'm playing this clip for context. So Alex Jones is getting sued for defamation, which I think he's likely to win because you're not going to find
Alex Jones is likely to win, or the fan. Okay,
right. Unless the court is stacked, Alex Jones is likely to win because you will not find a single instance of audio of Alex Jones defamating the name of a child, the name of a family,
right,
the name of a mom or dad, or any particular individual instance of this shooting. And I think for defamation to hold, you've got to prove that you in particular have been defamed.
Right. And the one thing I was going to say, in our chat rooms jump on First Amendment, free speech.
Well,
but it's under the same guise of you can't go into a movie theater and yell out fire. Just because you have the amendment doesn't mean...
Yeah.
Yeah. So But you're right.
Well,
if he's not
hold on.
specific, yeah, you're right.
Let's not get there yet.
Yeah.
Let's take our time with this one because I think this matters to podcasting in a big way. So I want everyone to understand the context of which Alex Jones finds himself. Also, if you would like to see Alex Jones have a complete emotional breakdown, watch The Overtime from 289.
Is a hoax. Here's a sampler of Jones's assertions that the family finds actionable.
The official story of Sandy Hook has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. My gut tells me the White House, people controlling the governments were involved in this.
Now, these clips of Alex Jones now are from when we started this show, before Sandy Hook. These clips here, in some cases, when he's in this old studio, are pre-Sandy Hook in some cases. Not all of them, but some of these clips they're intersplicing here are not actually relevant to him talking about Sandy Hook. Just to point that out.
Yeah.
My gut tells me the White House, people controlling the governments were involved in this. So don't ever think the globalists that have hijacked this country wouldn't stage something like this. They kill little kids all day, every day. And it's not our government. It's the globalist. I mean, they're doing it. They're doing it. They're staging it.
In court, Jones's lawyer admitted, quote, maybe it's fringe speech, maybe it's dangerous speech. That's not defamation. That's rhetorical hyperbole at its core. He's trying to get the case dismissed under the Texas Citizens Participation Act, which protects citizens' rights to free speech against plaintiffs who aim to silence them through costly litigation.
All right, so that is sort of the background for this week's news, because that's from weeks ago.
Now, question. Does the person involved have a mustache?
You know how we feel about mustaches.
I know.
You know how we feel about that.
Do you not have that clip anymore?
I don't know. Let me see. I mean, not rhetoric.
I mean, since,
we are the original, mustaches. Have we not been mocking Alex Jones for years?
Well, I know we have. But, I mean, if we're going to go out on this, and we're busting out old clips and old soundboard items.
I don't know if I have that.
You don't have. All right.
I don't stock because we don't talk about Alex Jones. I don't stock it.
I like mustaches.
I do too.
Yeah.
But if you were going to go after Alex Jones, there's plenty of things you could go after him for. But
Sure.
This one feels like one of the weaker defenses because it's from years ago. It's not directly against a particular child or particular parent. It's sort of weak sauce. And so that was a couple of weeks ago. This week, in what I think is the first time we've ever seen this, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple, and SoundCloud, and others, all in unison, pulled all Alex Jones podcasts from their, respective directories.
He suggested the Sandy Hook school shooting was a hoax and that the September 11th terror attacks were an inside job by the government. I'm talking about Alex Jones. He is the founder of InfoWars, and he is now feeling the heat himself. YouTube, Facebook, and Apple all announcing they're removing his content from their platforms.
Can you think of another large podcast that has been pulled from iTunes because of, these reasons?
No, I have not.
Here's how YouTube explained its decision. Quote, when users violate policies repeatedly, like our policies against hate speech and harassment or our terms prohibiting circumvention of our enforcement measures, we terminate their accounts. With me now.
That's YouTube, and many others had similar thoughts, and some argued this is the morally correct thing to do. This is what we must do because Alex Jones's speech is not only wrong and incorrect and fake news, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, and Willie, speaking of companies having to step up, it does seem that some large tech companies have stepped up.
Step up. You notice these terminologies. Yeah. Step up.
Against InfoWars and a host that not only has made the life of parents whose children were slaughtered at Sandy Hook back in 2012, December of 2012.
Because Joe cares.
Made their lives a living hell, with many of them having to move from one.
Joe, by the way, isn't in studio because he's out fucking Mika in the sunshine, so they have to do this remotely. Just so you know, by the way, that's why he's not in studio right now. But he cares. He cares a lot.
One place to another and getting threats against their own lives because of lies that he's spreading about them. But Also last week, shockingly enough, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, accusing Robert Mueller of running a child prostitution ring and then holding up his finger like it's a gun and simulating the shooting of Robert Mueller. And
a radio host held up his finger like a gun and simulated shooting Robert Mueller. A radio host. That's so damaging.
You might hate what I'm going to say.
No, I want to hear it. I want to hear a counterpoint.
Google, YouTube. Well, you Google, YouTube, same thing. Facebook, right? I don't know the other ones. You know, those are platforms that they decide to make their own rules.
I completely agree.
And I've always been a believer of owning your own content, meaning you are your own host. You put your stuff on your own stuff if you can. And because no one can take that away from you because it's yours, right? And that will protect you in the First Amendment's rights. Outside of that, you have to abide by the terms of service of those providers.
Yeah, you want to go play on that playground, you got to follow their rules.
Now, I'm not saying that what they did, is not consistent with other users that I've seen on those platforms. And, I have seen many people, especially in the gaming community, get removed and taken down, and they have to fight tooth and nail because of bogus DMCAs and, that sort of thing.
We get pulled down every other week.
Oh, absolutely. And so to say, first off, I don't usually agree with most of what Alex Jones says because a lot of the stuff he says is fringe out there for me. However, you know what? That it's within their right to do, and they're probably succumbing to either public pressure, stockholder pressure, or both.
I agree.
Yeah,
and the thing is this is their right as private platforms, and if you don't like it, then what you really don't like is the centralization of the internet.
Yeah.
The centralization of the internet is what makes this possible.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I have to like it.
No, and they need to be consistent, and that's the part that bugs the hell out of me. Is you see one thing that applies to somebody else, but it doesn't apply to you, or vice versa. The enforcement's not consistent. If I'm a small YouTuber, I don't have a contact person to my account, so there isn't somebody that I can pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, why is there a strike here? Why has my video been pulled down? It's pulling down my revenue."
You know what I worry about?
It's not consistent.
Here's what I worry about is I worry about the moving of the goalpost intellectually.
Yeah.
I worry about what is allowed discourse to continue to become tighter and tighter and tighter. I worry about a world in which Alex Jones is considered the fringe of allowed discourse. And I think we both think of it this way. When Alex Jones is considered the fringe, I think we have a real problem.
Yeah.
There is no fringe. There is just different ideas.
Right.
And when we start labeling people as fringe, what happens is we have our protectors, like your iTunes and your YouTubes and your Facebook, who will come in and they will say, this level of speech, this ring, if you will, let's say it's a ring, and there's different rings. This ring of speech is no longer allowed. We're going to bring that ring in a little bit tighter. Because that is offensive. That harms people. That speech harms people. So we're going to bring this in a little tighter. But the problem is then that new tightness becomes the new normal.
Right.
And within, there will be another controversy. Somebody at that outer new fringe will say something crazy. And that something crazy will be like Saudi Arabia. It has horrible human rights issues.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows? That new crazy could be something that's strong against Israel. Or that new crazy could be something that claims that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have a long list of people that they've murdered. There could be a new normal now that when you say something like that is so outrageous that the platforms must protect us from this harmful speech, and we must bring that ring in a little bit tighter. And it won't be long until shows like Unfilter and No Agenda and Jimmy Dore on YouTube and others are now within that ring, and they will now be affected. It starts with Alex Jones, but then it creates a new normal of what's allowed.
But then I think that's gives the opportunity and opening for not just those people that have either been removed from YouTube or Facebook to go out and create their own platform.
Well,
and to go out
yes.
to do their own thing.
It depends, though.
And,
so if
you can.
So let's just thought experiment here for a moment.
Yeah.
If, let's say, YouTube and iTunes shut down the Unfilter show, our existing audience would continue to listen. But you've been doing podcasting for a long time. You know.
Discoverability.
Nobody new would find us.
Yep.
This show would essentially stagnate.
Yep.
That would be what they accomplish.
Right.
So we would be essentially dead in the water. But Alex Jones, because of the reach that he has, plus I used to work with a guy years ago who was a Alex Jones premium subscriber. Before Alex Jones was posting clips on YouTube and uploading podcasts that were published on iTunes, he was selling everything through a paid portal. That model kind of fell apart, and to his credit, he realigned and he adopted the free platforms.
Right.
But that audience, that core audience, followed him to a paid platform. They would follow him again to a paid platform.
Yeah.
Alex Jones becomes a martyr. Alex Jones becomes the man they had to shut down because he knew too much. Alex Jones must have been onto the truth. He was telling the truth, so they had to shut him down.
I see where you're going.
So go subscribe at Infowars.com.
Right. Yeah.
Meanwhile, a show like Unfilter would be totally dead in the water. So people like Alex Jones, who are really loud and are strong personalities that draw people in, especially the beta sheep, they're going to do great. And small independent publishers are going to be ground down.
Well, do you think though possibly that the reason why they took notice was because of how big he was? Like the small guy wouldn't necessarily be effective because you're not even a blimp on YouTube's radar. Because I mean, there's plenty of videos on there of, people beating up each other.
You know what Alex thinks?
What's that?
I'll play a little bit of his statement.
Yeah.
And this is part of what pissed YouTube off. And this is one of the reasons he got kicked off of YouTube is he keeps going on other channels. So Alex Jones, after he got his channel shut down, went on another channel to make a statement.
Ha!
These are different clips of pages that are talking about Alex Jones getting kicked off.
We knew it was coming. The whole thing was formulaic. First, demonize InfoWars, lie about us, build a straw man, then sue us to add credibility to that, then have a few fake strikes on YouTube and Facebook with nebulous terms like bullying children and Islamophobia. And then voila, 2 weeks later, ban InfoWars completely off of dozens of major platforms where we were all in the top 5 or top 10 news feeds. CNN, MSNBC, the rest of the dying news system like the New York Times and the Washington Post, groups that are propped up by the Mexican kingpin in the case of the New York Times, Carlos Slim, in the case of the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, they can't allow something like InfoWars with a fraction of the crew or the money to be ranked higher than them on iTunes or on YouTube.
I actually think he's right. So if you, I think I have it, but go look for TV ads, go Google TV ads. I just looked at the numbers. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm honestly not saying this to brag. I have legitimately had episodes of Linux Action Show that have had more downloads than CNN is getting in views sometimes during the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
As a
totally.
podcast.
Yeah.
So if I can achieve that, I am without doubt that Alex Jones can achieve that.
Sure.
And his argument is that they had to shut him down. Now, Sandy Hook, the shooting in Sandy Hook happened December 14th, 2012. So they're currently screwing him over something that happened in 2012. I don't know if you know this, but this is 2018. So he may have a bit of a point here. It may be one part silencing. It may be one part punishing those that are connected to Trump. And I bet you it's a lot of parts. Let's just get this guy quiet before he gets any bigger.
Or this is, his way of obviously spinning it for...
Oh, it is.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, he's got a logo, InfoWars, with a censored thing across. Like they're
embracing it.
They're already making hay out of this.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, I understand the frustration. While I don't agree with some of his messaging, of course, in it, I understand it. Like, I totally get it. And, if we ever got to that point and we're all of a sudden, we need to take these guys out, boom, there goes the channel. It's easy.
I just wish we could exist in a society where there could be someone who is loud about an idea that is so counter to everything you believe, and yet there is space allowed for it.
Right.
Like, ideas are not action.
Yeah.
Actions are actions.
Right.
Like if I think about punching you in the face, that is dramatically different than actually punching you in the face.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I just wish there was space for both.
Yeah.
I really do. Also, I feel like we should look at the way everybody behaves on the internet, the way people behave when they're driving in traffic. Like, people get upset.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Think about it. The way people get road rage,
Yeah.
they would never do that in person. But when
No.
you're in the safety of your own little car, oh, that son of a bitch, that dumb idiot, people get all upset. They get all worked up, just like they do online, just like they do in chat rooms and Twitter. But if they were sitting in a room talking to each other, they would never say those things.
No.
It's that same concept of road rage applies to the internet.
It just comes back to communication in general.
We have to I feel like we just have to make room for things that upset us,
right?
Because it gives us an opportunity intellectually to grow.
And that's where, if there's something that is being said that I particularly disagree with, I don't turn them off.
Right.
It's a matter of as long as there is an actual active two-way communication where
you're not just yelling at
I'm just not yelling at you to make a point.
It's not about calling names.
We're listening to each other more than we're speaking to each other. That's where we can make a difference. And unfortunately, right now, we're seeing the divide becoming more and more splintered and more wedged.
Well, if you are concerned about this, your federal government is on the case.
Oh, great.
And I'll have
which .gov website do I go to?
I have a couple of links in the show notes to read more. But the idea is maybe the whole problem with social networking is that we need to regulate it.
Uh-oh.
My interest here is that for the social media companies, there's just a mismatch of incentives.
Uh-oh. We got a mismatch of incentives.
Yeah, we're not getting our fair share.
The social media companies, they want users and clicks and impressions and inflammatory and often false content.
Not politicians, though. Politicians never want any of those things.
No.
So they do not have a mismatch of incentives. Not politicians. They don't want attention. They don't use false news to their advantage. They don't try to get as much attention as possible. So we can trust the politicians to regulate social media. What could ever go wrong?
My interest here is that for the social media companies, there's just a mismatch of incentives. The social media companies, they want users and clicks and impressions, and inflammatory and often false content creates that. So even when the companies can't or haven't decided to identify a certain account as either foreign or nefarious, they can still downgrade the posts to limit their exposure. This is an equal or worse problem with conspiracies and junk news as it is with foreign influence. My question.
So the issue is, anyone in the world can sign up for Twitter. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Oh, boy.
And even if they're not a verified account, they could still tweet something that gets retweeted. So we have to do something about this.
Here would be for the three of you, do you think these down-ranking programs are effective? Are they the kind of thing that ought to be considered part of the kind of toolbox as we look to deal with this problem, Ms. DeResta and the rest of you?
How's your toolbox, Chase?
My toolbox is feeling pretty good.
Yeah, so Ron Wyden is worried about the social network companies' toolboxes, and we'll have a few more links in the show notes if you're worried about those toolboxes as well. I know I sure am.
Yeah.
I feel like as we're on our last episode, there are so many headwinds to actually getting real information right now.
Yeah. Yes.
It would be really hard to start this show.
Oh, where would you start?
I don't know. Where would you start right now? Could you imagine trying to start a show like this in 2018?
Oh, my.
There's rumors of a new community effort by people that you may know. And I can't even imagine how they would do it. Can't even imagine. Mr. Chase, before we move on, before we get to the high note, should we take a moment?
Let's take a moment to head on over and check out our sack. Not that sack. No! Hey, I want to say right here before we jump into the sack at patreon.com/unfilter that all of you who took the time and energy to write into us is greatly appreciated. We will miss you all. And it's one of those situations for me where I was trying to come up with some words of things to say and
I know.
and try to share with you guys
or even try to summarize all of the feedback that we got. That's one of the things we've been talking about is like, how do we go through it all?
But to tell you guys just straight up from me that, doing the show with Chris and seeing what it's turned into has been truly an honor and a privilege to do this. and also to be able to talk to you guys every single week. And only thing I've ever tried to do is just try to be as fair as possible and to build upon myself and become more informed about the world around us. And through this community, you know, it's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, it really has. In fact, this feedback it's been really, really good for me because there were some rough times with our subreddit.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the feedback that we've gotten, especially during the election, that was rough on Chase and I. But to see the awesome amount of feedback that we got.
Yeah.
The last post that Chase did on the Patreon was open to the public. And we just got so many. Yeah. And people are commenting across multiple threads and like just such a solid, awesome, great community.
If there's any kind of wish that I would implore on all of you, because I know that there are hardcore, Democrats that listen to our show. There are hardcore Republicans that listen to our show.
After this show, you think so?
Absolutely. I bet there's people of all shapes and sizes. All I hope is, at the end of the day, we're able to listen and talk to each other. And also, please engage and vote. Just a personal story. I live in a town of about 68,000 people, and we had our primary election yesterday. And I've seen so much hate about taxes and politicians never listen to us, and only 8,000 people voted. So if you complain about what's happening in our world and you don't vote, you can go F yourself. You need to engage. You need to get off your chair and just pay attention to what's going on. Even if you turn off all the news and everything that's going on in the world, make sure that you at least know what the hell is happening right now. So that being said, I'm going to open up the sack. Now, we don't have, unfortunately, the time to go through all the comments.
No.
But we will pick out a few. First off, I just want to say, hey, this comes in from Drew. Says, in the morning, gents. I'm connect in the chat, not nearly as often as I hope. And while I haven't been able to tune in live, I've always found great joy in listening to the deconstruction and discussion in each episode. I cannot thank you all enough for the work that you've done. The world has grown increasingly harsh, but folks like you and the No Agenda Boys have kept me sane these last few years. I'll keep rocking that awesome Unfilter hoodie and keep proclaiming, show me the money! Nice. Jonathan writes in, says, hey, I found you guys about 3 to 4 years ago when I Googled Unbiased Politics Podcast.
Hey, nice.
I went through a few top 5 unbiased blah blahs. And after sampling a bunch, you guys and No Agenda were the only two consistently to get to the bottom of the issues without protecting a side. So refreshing. I like you guys better than No Agenda because you're funny without spending the extra hour with digressions and witticisms. Adam Curley, mostly. That's what he said, not me. Love the overtime. Hello, Nancy is great. What a faith healer.
We may need some faith healers.
And I learned a ton about CBDs in the high note. Thank you.
We got a lot about that. We got a lot about the high note, and surprising amount of people that wrote in about Oh Nancy too, which surprised me. A lot of people, I guess, got value out of the Oh Nancy segment, which I just didn't expect. That's just a recurring segment we do in the overtime.
Yeah.
I'll give a plug here to a couple of shows. Number one, I'll give a plug. We just mentioned to Adam and John show, but I'll also give a plug if you are on the left or progressive, but you want somebody that hasn't lost it yet. I think Jimmy Dore does a pretty good job of doing that. There are decent outlets of news on YouTube if you're willing to sit down and listen and sort of sort it all out.
Yeah, kind of decloud it, if you will, declutter it. Joshua Mayer writes in from Germany and says, hey, greetings to the both of you. Since about a year ago, you have been providing me with an insight perspective on events and politics in the United States, a perspective that the German media doesn't and probably can't provide. Let me just say that I highly appreciate this last year of shows. I understand your decision because occasionally I find myself turning away from the frustrating realities in politics where nothing seems to be getting better. And everybody is fighting flame wars on the smallest of issues. This is when I turn away to focus on things that I enjoy and actually get better, such as Linux. I hope you will be able to fill those hours preparing Unfiltered with something more gratifying. And you know what, Joshua? My wife was just saying to me the other day that, hey, that's going to give you more time to do tech and pinball and stuff. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Nathan in Bethany writes in and says, hey, my husband and I found your show in 2016 after Dan Carlin started releasing, quote, Common Sense less frequently. Must be a show. And we hope to find another reasonable alternative perspective to mainstream media. I wish that we had found you sooner. And we have enjoyed every episode since started listening. Your show has been deeply meaningful to us, especially in processing the nonsense of the 2016 election and all that followed. I don't know how long you plan to leave the Patreon account active, but we plan to leave our support active for the next 6 months if that's an option.
Stop it.
I hope other patrons will consider doing the same to aid in your transition.
You know, that is, jeez, that's so generous. Can I just pause you for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
So we had a patron who upgraded to 33 this week.
I saw that too.
That just, like, I don't know, man. Like, that just meant, I don't know how to describe that.
No, I don't know
because
either.
obviously it's not about the money.
No.
It's just not about the money.
No, I mean, and I think we talked about this on last week's episode that we are at the highest level of support we've ever been at.
It's not about the money.
It's not about support at this point.
Yeah.
You know, we've come up, we've obviously have the model, we've substantiated ourselves, but it's just all the baggage, if that's the right word of putting it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, political baggage, I guess.
So here's a couple things we're doing. Just to kind of make it right. Number one thing we're doing is we're going to make the BitTorrent sync of our clips public.
The open archive.
The supporter sync will be public.
Yeah.
That'll be posted in the show notes at unfilter.show/290. So if you've ever wanted to get all of the clips, the source code to
now's
the show,
your time.
We're going to make it available to everybody. I think the patrons would be cool with that, and I think some of them have been looking for it. I think that's a good way to do that. Number two, I would ask you, if you would still like to support our work, to go over to patreon.com/JupiterSignal, because I have plans, probably in a month or two, to announce some big investments that I intend to do with that funding. And now that we are spinning down Unfilter, we will need that support more than ever, because there will be a monetary loss, obviously.
Yeah.
With stopping the show. Because again, it's not about the money.
No.
It's about making really tough choices that make sustainability in the future possible. And I won't lie. Like when I rendered out the intro video today, when I rendered out my last intro video for this show, I got a little teary. Like, it was a moment for me, dude.
Well, you know, as I was driving here, now I usually have a meeting on Wednesdays, and that's why I'm usually late, but today it was canceled. By the way, today is 8/8/18. 8 is, I believe, a good luck number in the Chinese culture.
Isn't that crazy?
By the way, some have asked, and actually I saw it come by in the chat room, what's going to happen with me? Does this mean I'm quitting Jupiter Broadcasting?
No. We're just...
No.
Chase and I have just always enjoyed working together.
Yeah. And
so we'll find other things to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially we got this new Star Trek series that's going to be coming down the pipe.
Oh, my gosh.
I know, and it's like I've already spoken with my friends at work. It's like, dude, something has to happen here.
Make it so.
Make it so. But no,
I'm owning that. By the way, we should go register before we publish this. You should register. Make it so. Come on, shouldn't that be the new show's name? Make it so.
Yeah, but I bet it's already taken.
You better do it right now.
Well, I mean, I'm checking.
Anyways, not to.
But no,
but
that being said, I think, I mean, there's so many great comments in here.
I know.
And
I read all of them. I read every single one of them.
Yeah, me too. You know, as they would come in. Just to give my personal recommendations for political podcasts, I honestly don't listen to that many because I'm so focused on this show. But I definitely have to toss it back to Adam and John with No Agenda. If it wasn't for No Agenda and Chris deciding to donate into that show, this show today wouldn't have happened. I'm a believer of how things happen in our universe, because I wouldn't have reached out to Chris.
Yeah.
Chris and I wouldn't have chatted about and say, hey, let's try to do a different type of political show. And here we are. And so 5 years later, it's been an incredible journey, an incredible ride.
Right.
And
it has. And I'll just add on to that. I would encourage whatever show, and there's a bunch in our public Patreon comments, so you can go through there if you're looking for ones. Please try to find one that if it isn't unbiased, please try to find one on each side of the spectrum try to find something that makes you just slightly uncomfortable, even if you don't listen to it every single week. Listen to it from time to time and just try to hear the other side's story. Please do that. Please try to take the concepts and the frameworks in which we have used to view this stuff, to think about all of this. And I feel like you probably have already nailed that, to be honest with you. You guys probably know the Unfilter formula at this point. And so do that. I'll give one more recommendation. This is kind of more on the progressive side, I suppose. But I listen to the New York Times The Daily about 3 times a week or so. They do a decent job of giving you the New York Times perspective, which again I think is pretty valuable to have. So whatever you're listening to, try to think of yourself as like have fun with it. Like, think of yourself as an intelligence agent who is collecting information, and you're collecting it from all of the different sources, and then you're going through it in your mind and you're summarizing what you believe, what sounds legitimate to you. And if you do that, you're gonna be great. You don't need this show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you know what we do need?
We need
Mommy needs a joint.
Hey, Mommy.
Yeah, buddy. We do. We got to end this show on a high note. One of our favorite topics to cover since the very, very beginning of this show. It is the high note, and you knew it was going to happen, Mr. Chase. You must have known Heineken's going to get in on the cannabis business.
Of course.
According to Business Insider, a new beer from Heineken by California beer brand Lagunitas called Hi-Fi Hops is made with marijuana instead of alcohol. The new brew from Lagunitas, Heineken's fastest-growing California beer label, bills its beer as hoppy sparkling water. The brew reportedly contains 0 alcohol, instead made with THC, the main psychoactive ingredient in marijuana.
I gotta say, that's probably gonna be horrible.
Maybe they can't legally combine it with beer. I don't know.
A sparkling cannabis-flavored water sounds like drinking weeds.
Hey, but it's low in calories.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and
it's gluten-free.
My figure. But I love that Heineken's... Also, I didn't have great audio for it, but Coors, the company behind Coors, also wants to get in on this.
Here we go.
It's going to be a battle, dude.
Once it becomes off of Schedule 1, boom. It's going to hit the...
It's going to be big.
Yeah.
You know what we don't talk a lot about is the worldview on cannabis legalization, and Uruguay has some serious early progress.
A grinding noise familiar to cannabis users. But Ismail didn't need to go to a dealer to get it. Instead, he went to a pharmacy. He's registered on an official list and can buy up to 10 grams each week. Within a year, the number registered has gone up 5-fold, from 5,000 to 25,000.
The quality is good. It's strong enough to have an effect, but allows me to live a normal life. It's not the stuff that makes you crazy.
Like many, Enrique was skeptical at first of selling this new product. Concerned for his reputation, how much money he could make, and also of it making him a target of robbery.
Isn't this interesting? It's like the same story.
Yeah.
Again.
Just in another country.
Isn't that something?
That's amazing.
And like the culture like slowly adjusting to the idea and all that. It's fascinating. Now there's some good news for those that are selling pot in Denver. I say that now because this happens during the overtime too. The last couple of clips of the show
won't go.
Yeah, my Dragon player wants to crash. Dragon player's like, you know what?
I've had enough.
I'm done.
I'm done for today.
VLC back up.
Charges are dismissed for 18 Denver pot shop employees who allegedly sold too much marijuana to customers.
That's just funny.
You've sold too much.
Yeah.
You're doing too well.
Yeah.
We'll shut you down.
So when I was coming back from Texas recently, I stopped in Colorado and I went in a pot shop to see what that's like.
Yeah.
And they do it differently than they do it here in Washington.
Yeah.
At least the one I went to had a lobby where you got a queue number and you waited. And once a certain amount inside the store area
like
left,
the number of people?
Yeah, they had a number.
Yeah.
And once they could only allow so many per employees that were working. It was like two customers.
The medical shops used to do that here too.
Yeah. 2 customers per employee or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And so that ratio had to be right, and you had to just wait in the lobby.
Yeah.
And then I went in there and bought nothing, of course.
Yeah.
Their arrests were the results of an undercover police sting back in December. The city shut down 8 dispensaries, all accused of endangering public safety. Melissa Garcia is live at one of those shops at I-25 in Evans. And Melissa, you spoke with a former bud tender who faced more than a year in prison.
That is until yesterday, Kathy. Her attorney called her and told her the DA had dropped charges against her and 17 of her former colleagues.
Now, the thing the reason why I wanted to play this clip is that's the sort of undiscussed risk of working for one of these cannabis shops is you yourself as the dude behind the counter or the gal behind the counter could go to jail.
Right.
Like the employees themselves are facing jail time for potentially selling too much pot. Not the boss. They're not like the company's not getting a fine. The individual people behind the counter. That is scary. In a way, I kind of have respect for people that are willing to risk that. I really do. And maybe it's because they know that the big payoff is coming. It's not those crazy kids that just want to party, those college students that have just gotten out of home, or those overworked 30 and 40-somethings. No. It's the senior citizens with the pains.
Sat in front of her television, this 87-year-old is smoking marijuana. Brenna's evening routine now includes a few puffs on an electronic cigarette to help with her insomnia, and a massage with cannabis oil to ease her rheumatism.
The pain was so heavy, so I decided to, give it a real try. And after a few months, I was able to throw out the Vicodin. And I found that if I took a hit on the vape at night, it made me sleep longer.
Oh. This Californian grandma is part of a surging new wave of seniors turning to cannabis. She has even become the face of an advertising campaign to educate the elderly about the use of CBD.
She's a big old smiling on this.
Chap,
it's legal. It's legal now.
The therapeutic chemical in cannabis seen as a natural alternative to drugs.
CBD has been in the news a lot here, the non-psychoactive part of cannabis, because the seniors want to use cannabis. They've heard about all of its health benefits, but they don't want to get high.
But some do.
Seniors arrive by the busload at this dispensary, straight from their retirement home.
Isn't that cute?
Following an information session,
and that's when you're actually putting the cannabis drops into your mouth.
They hit the boutique in search of chocolates, ointments, and sprays. For now, only 3% of Americans over the age of 65 are regular users.
Many older people are terrified of drugs. They don't mind medications, which usually are really bad for you, but cannabis frightens them. It's just a miracle plant. I can't say enough good about it.
Though there are still very few elderly cannabis users, there are 20 times more than there were 30 years ago, a statistic that has not gone unnoticed by industry professionals, who expect seniors to pour tens of millions of dollars into the market by 2020.
Oh! It's going to be huge. Seniors are going to be vets, seniors, people with anxiety, people that can't sleep.
Today's millennials will be next generation's cannabis users.
If this show came back like in 2020 for the election or something just ridiculous,
yeah,
it'd be really interesting to see where this market's at.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So keep your ears, keep your eyes out, watch the Twitter feeds, keep your RSS subscriptions active. You never know what may happen in the future. You may see community shows prop up that are in the works. And there is a Telegram group. All of that's available, patreon.com/unfilter. It'll be up for a little bit longer. And then after that, unfilter.show. But Mr. Chase.
Yes, Chris.
While the show's not over, the overtime is coming up.
There's overtime.
If people need to depart, if they're done with their meat and veggies, where can they get more Chase in their face throughout the weeks?
If you want to connect with me on the Twitterverse, twitter.com/NUNES. My name is Nunes. You can also check out what I'm doing on the Geeky Thing side, geekgamer.tv. And I know there's some of you that don't do any of those social media platforms. If you want to send me a personal note, you can email me, chase@geekgamer.tv.
Brilliant.
Mr. Chris, as always, people can follow you on the Twitterverse where?
Sure, at ChrisLAS. The whole network is at Jupiter Signal. And do check in from time to time over at jupiterbroadcasting.com because there are new shows in the works. There is so much stuff that we have planned for the future that we hope you'll check back in from time to time and keep on listening to future shows. But in the meantime, if you have to head out, if you must depart, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
For as long as you have. We hope you've enjoyed the show.
Yes.
Maybe consider sticking around for the overtime. Just stick around a little bit longer.
Just this time.
But in the meantime, we'll see you sometime in the future.
Yeah. Good night and good luck.
And thanks for all the fish.
Yes.
We had to say that.
Yeah, lots of fish. Thank you all. Good night, everybody. We did it, Hillary. We did it.
We can't stop yet. Oh no, my friends. The show's still going. It's time for overtime.
Reclaiming my time.
Thank you to our patrons for the years of support at patreon.com/unfilter. As you would expect, no new patrons this week. Although, it's pretty amazing that some of you upped your Patreon for one more week. You're amazing. Thank you. So I hope you enjoy this overtime segment one last time, just for you, our patrons, and those of you that were ever considering to be a patron, patreon.com/unfilter. But you know what? Since it's our last one, I'm going to let anybody watch. Anybody. Yeah. So you're all welcome. Come on in. Gather around the screen, children. It's time for overtime. And one of the things we like to do here in the overtime segment is we like to examine the systemic rot of the Democratic Party that's caused them to lose and made Trump the president of this here United States. And instead of blaming Russia, we look at the corporatist, bland politicians that run the Democratic Party, like Nancy Pelosi, who even though she's rich, even though she brings in all the millions for the parties, she, just like you and I, my friends, mixes up her millions, trillions, and billions.
Imagine
it's
that,
very
130
confusing.
million people, meaning 130 million families probably. They did this handing a massive tax cut to the wealthiest families and people in America. 83% of benefits went to the top 1%. Couple $1 trillion added to the national debt. And then they said, how are we going to pay for that?
How?
We're going to cut Medicare and we're going to cut Social Security.
That's what they said.
$1.4 billion.
Billion?
In Medicare. No. $1.4 trillion in Medicare.
Okay, so first it was $1 million, then it was $1 billion, now it's $1 trillion.
And $500 billion in Medicaid.
She just said Social Security, but that's okay. That's, we...
Medicare. No. $1.4 trillion in Medicare.
Okay, sorry.
And $500 billion in Medicaid. Attacking the sacred right to health care as a right for all. But we can't do our inside maneuvering. It won't count for much without the outside mobilization.
So we can't do outside-inside maneuvering. Can't.
So they're our VIPs. They're our special guests today. The cost of prescription drugs is something that is really debilitating.
We may need some faith healers.
So that's Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, ironically titled, speaking very poorly. But somebody we don't talk about, but is infinitely just as corrupt, is your friend Dianne Feinstein.
Ed Henry is live in Washington with the backstory on this. Ed, good evening.
Sandra, great to see you. It's the collusion story the media does not want to cover obsessively, perhaps because it does not involve President Trump and Russia. Instead, it's all about China infiltrating the office of a very powerful Democrat in Dianne Feinstein. It turns out her longtime staffer, Russell Lowe, who was a driver, as you said, and also liaison to the Asian American community in California, visited relatives overseas several.
How perfect is that? First of all, she's got a scarf that looks like it has a pair of dicks on it. Second of all, it like a script right out of a movie. Her driver was the spy. Now that matters because of Feinstein's positions.
years ago and became acquainted on the trip with someone who was connected to the People's Republic of China's Ministry of State Security. Quote, he didn't even know what was happening, that he was being recruited, a source told the San Francisco Chronicle. He just thought it was some friend. Well, not exactly. So 5 years ago, FBI agents showed up at Feinstein's office in D.C. and revealed her staffer was under investigation for possibly spying for China.
5 years ago, and we're just now learning?
In fairness, it does not appear the driver actually revealed anything of major substance, though we still don't know all the details, so the jury's out on that. But the contact with China was certainly serious enough that Feinstein forced the aide into retirement and tried to keep all of this hush-hush until the Chronicle blew the lid off of it. And the president has been trying to keep the heat on ever since, charging first on Twitter Friday night and then at a campaign rally Saturday in Ohio that Feinstein is the former chair of the Senate Intel panel. And the president tweeted, Diane is the person leading our nation on collusion with Russia, only done by Democrats. Will she now investigate herself?
Oh, yeah. No, we don't care about Debbie's Pakistani friends. We don't care about the Chinese infiltrating Dianne Feinstein 5 years ago. We only care about 4D chess playing Putin. Let's be honest. Now, there's another character that you've heard us talk a little bit about, and that is Cortez. And she was missing from Obama's endorsement list. Funny enough, she wasn't the only Democrat missing from Obama's list of 80 Democrats you should vote for.
Former President Barack Obama just endorsed 81 candidates from across the nation in federal, state, and down ballot races. A quote from him real quick. I'm proud to endorse such a wide and impressive array of Democratic candidates.
No.
Wait for it.
Hey.
I want to get your response to that and note two people who are not on the list. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California and the booming and blooming Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Dianne Feinstein, not on Barry's list of buys. Isn't that interesting? Although, really, it's a clown show over at the GOP, too.
The Justice Department has indicted a sitting U.S. Congressman, Republican Congressman Chris Collins of New York. The allegations against him incredibly serious. The allegations, securities fraud, insider trading. Shimon Perkipes standing by with the details. And Shimon, I do want to read for our viewers as you before you walk us through the indictment. The allegation is,
Is it just me, or does that guy look like a bobblehead figure? Now, for you audience members out there who are listening via audio, the majority, I can't really fully describe. The guy, he's sitting strangely, and his body is too small for the size of this man's head. You know how sometimes you go into the grocery store and you see a piece of meat or you see a banana and it's just way too big. And you're like, man, the only way that banana could be that big is if it's genetically modified. Or that tomato is just too red, man. It's too red. It's not even in season right now. How can it be that red? Well, it's genetically modified, right? That guy's head has been genetically modified to be a pundit. It is literally like a bobblehead on a body. So I'm curious to see what he has to say.
Wire fraud, securities fraud, false statements. Here is the full statement coming from Representative Chris Collins. Let me read it. We will answer the charges filed against Congressman Collins in court and will mount a vigorous defense to clear his good name. It is notable that even the government does not allege that Congressman Collins traded a single share of Innate Therapeutics stock. We are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated. Congressman Collins will have more to say on this issue later today. So that raises a question. Will he hold a press conference? Will he issue a personal statement? This comes from his team. But again, this is about a pharmaceutical company out of Australia that he sat on the board of while he was a sitting U.S. congressman until just April, right?
Right, that's right. And that's an interesting statement from the defense attorney, because what the government is alleging in its indictment is that he was passing information, non-public information, to his son, Cameron Collins, who was also indicted, and then that son was passing the information to other people, and they were trading on that information. Look, he was the guy who knew what was going on here. He knew that there were some negative results, according to this indictment, on this drug trial, and he then took that information, the government says, and passed it along. The other thing I think that's interesting here is that they're using, in this indictment, they talk about how he tried to conceal the trading and the issues surrounding the drug stock. At one point in this indictment, they mentioned how his office had issued a statement to a local reporter, and the statement said, quote, "Neither Christopher Collins nor his daughter have sold shares prior, during, or after N8's recent stock halt, and that Cameron Collins had liquidated all his shares before the stock halt was lifted, after the stock halt was lifted, suffering a substantial financial loss." And the indictment says this statement was written in a manner designed to mislead the public into believing that Cameron Collins had not sold any N8 shares prior to the public announcement. So essentially, there's an allegation here that he was issuing public statements to mislead the public, to mislead the investigators here into thinking that there was no insider trader.
Oops, no insider trader. Nice slip of the tongue there by Mr. Bobblehead. All right, let's serious it up a little bit. Let's do some world news. Have you noticed this feud between Saudi Arabia and Canada? It came into my attention, and if you have noticed, it probably made your attention too, when Saudi Arabia made this super, super creepy imagery that showed a airliner flying into a Canadian tower. Well, not into it, but like approaching the Toronto airline, the Toronto Air, like approaching a building. It's really hard to describe over audio, but when I saw this imagery going around on Twitter, I think I've linked it in the show notes if you want to see it yourself. It really, it caught my attention. Like, what the hell are they doing here? They're essentially threatening a 9/11 style attack if Canada doesn't just mind their own business. So I wanted to search out a clip that kind of explains what's going on.
Saudi Arabia has expelled Canada's ambassador and has frozen trade between the two nations after accusing the Canadian government of, their words, blatant interference in the kingdom's domestic affairs.
How dare you? How dare you, Canadians, challenge how we punish our evildoers? How dare you?
RT's Alex Mihailovich has more from Toronto.
You ever wonder why U.S. politicians are totally anti-Assad? They're totally anti-Iranian regime, but yet they're totally cool hanging out with Saudi Arabia's leadership? Well, this is why.
A diplomatic battle is raging between Canada and Saudi Arabia, and the first blows were dealt on Twitter. Last Thursday, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chrystia Freeland, tweeted, "Very alarmed to learn that Samar Badawi, Raif Badawi's sister, has been imprisoned in Saudi Arabia. Canada stands together with the Badawi family in this difficult time, and we continue to strongly call for the release of both Raif and Samar Badawi." Continuing the criticism of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Friday, Canada's Foreign Affairs Department tweeted, "Canada is gravely concerned about additional arrests of civil society and women's rights activists in Saudi Arabia, including Samar Badawi. We urge the Saudi authorities to immediately release them and all other peaceful human rights activists." The tweets were in reference to the Islamic Kingdom arresting 2 women's rights activists, the latest in a sweep which includes activists, clerics, and journalists. Samar Badawi is the sister of writer Raif Badawi, who is already imprisoned in Saudi Arabia and was sentenced to 1,000 lashes for insulting Islam.
Yep. Yep. So Canada is completely in the right here. Lashes, dude? Really? I mean, okay. So that's how we're doing this, huh? So Canada is what I was going to call him as a joke. Canada is totally in the right here, and Saudi Arabia is smacking them down like a little schoolyard bully for pulling this off. I think it's fascinating to watch this, and it's not getting a ton of coverage. Not really. There is a story that is getting some coverage, though, is this assassination attempt via drone.
Alleged assassination attempt by drone broadcast on live TV, and tonight major new developments from Venezuela. Authorities there say they have detained at least a half dozen suspects. The president of Venezuela speaking at a military rally over the weekend when an explosion erupts. His bodyguards rushing in there to protect him.
Now, this is a fascinating scene if you're watching the video version. The way the bodyguards try to protect him, it's really something, and it shows you our commitment as hairless monkeys to our leaders.
Troops suddenly rushing away, then the TV signal suddenly cuts out. And tonight, the president there retweeting this video suggesting it was the drone that suspects used to try to kill him. But there are major questions about whether this was one of those drones. ABC's Matt Guppin, who has reported here on the crashing economy in Venezuela, the desperation there. He's back tonight with what the U.S. is now saying about the dangers of drones and assassination attempts.
Oh, brother.
This is claimed to be the moment of a suspected assassination attempt on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Maduro was speaking on live TV at a National Guard parade in the capital Saturday when suddenly you see his wife flinch and look up. Maduro then looks up. The camera rattles as you hear what sound like explosions. His security team swarms, shielding him with those bulletproof blankets and bundling him off stage. Below the grandstand, his vaunted...
So they just gloss right over it. Let me go back.
Bulletproof blankets.
So they have with them, apparently, bulletproof blankets. They look like giant shields that are probably about 5 feet long, 6 feet maybe, probably not that long, with a handle at the top, with the dude's hand sticking out. And they become literal human shields. They become literal human shields. Isn't that something? Their life for that man, who is really just no different than them. He has a different title. He pretends to be a leader, but he has the same DNA. He's the same kind of thing. But yet somehow we've convinced ourselves that it's worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 men's life that I can count here. It's really something to watch. And if this is what they do in Venezuela, you got to wonder what our procedures would be. It's a fascinating, I'm going to back it up. So the president's standing there, and I also got to give it to the president. He doesn't shit his pants once. Poo does not come out the entire time he's standing there. He steams, unlike Hillary, who froze under pressure when somebody rushed the stage, or other presidents who have recoiled and run away. He stands there trying to assess what's going on. So you got to give him credit for that. And then they rush around him and are ready to sacrifice themselves.
Then looks up. The camera rattles as you hear what sound like explosions. His security team swarms, shielding him with those bulletproof blankets and bundling him off stage. Below the grandstand, his vaunted National Guard break formation and scatter.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool to see that.
The regime said 7 people were injured, but no one killed. This as DHS Secretary Kristen Nielsen posted this message on Twitter saying the threat from drones is real.
I mean, maybe I have a soft spot for drones, I'll give you that. But I just hate how we freak out about this kind of stuff. There are ways to solve this. And, of course, the White House is totally denying any connection.
Now to that suspected assassination attempt on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Drones with explosives going off while he gave a speech. Venezuelans are saying co-conspirators from the U.S. were involved, but White House officials are denying that. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, has all the latest on this story. Good morning, Matt.
Now, if I was a Venezuelan, I would also blame the United States. It just is a way, way better narrative than someone within our own government tried to take me out, right? That's a way better narrative. Like, although maybe they didn't get the memo, you're supposed to blame, what's that? They don't blame Russia? The rest of the world blames the United States? Okay. Oh, thanks. Our secret CIA informant just set me straight. Anyways, back to the clip.
Denying that. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, has all the latest on this story. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, Amy. If this suspected coup turns out to be real, it would be the first ever assassination attempt using a drone on a head of state. Now, the Venezuelan regime says the alleged attempt was financed by people in Miami. The White House is saying unequivocally there was no U.S. government involvement at all in whatever happened.
You know, that coup in Turkey that was coordinated by the U.S., we didn't have anything to do with that. The overthrow of Libya that involved people from the U.S., we had nothing to do with that. What?
This morning, the U.S. is denying it had any role in the apparent assassination attempt on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on Saturday. Maduro was speaking at a military parade in the capital when suddenly you see his wife flinch, then look up. Maduro then looks up. The camera rattles as you hear what appear to be explosions. Within seconds, his security team bounces up, shielding him with those bulletproof blankets and hustling him off stage.
I gotta say, this could have been anybody. Come on, it could have been anybody. And if it was the U.S. and it was a drone strike, it would have worked. I don't think it was us. Just simply, we know how to use drones here. That's more of like a gangster level screw up is what that is. Or even somebody trying to just get attention. Speaking of trying to get attention, there's one person who wants none of it, and that's Peter Strzok. Too bad Judicial Watch has other intentions.
August 8, 2016. And I'll preface it by saying this for context. Ms. Page said, not ever going to become president, right? Right?
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
Repeat that again.
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
August 15th, 2016.
I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk.
Can you believe we exist in a reality where FBI agents have been caught texting this, and it's still not considered a smoking gun? I'm trying to think of a way I could make you think of this in isolation. I don't know if that's possible, but as a thought exercise, just for a moment, if we thought about, let's say we went 3 years down the road here, and there was no Russia collusion story, there was none of this Russia investigation stuff, and it came out that the FBI tried to prevent a president from being elected, that would be a fucking controversy like none other. But because it is yet another turn in this Russia investigation, we've normalized it. Think about what is being said here. What we know about Peter and his role in the FBI, and what is being said here, openly, about collusion and some man's, I forget, Andy, chat room, maybe you remember, Andy is, who is Andy? Andy is somebody in the FBI. He's like number 2 under Comey, and I feel really bad that I can't remember his name right now, but he's number 2 or number 3 in the FBI, this Andy guy they're referencing. So apparently, Peter and his girlfriend, if she really is his girlfriend, are hanging out in Andy's office talking about ways to make sure that Donald Trump never becomes the president. And we're not even talking about that anymore. It's just one more part of the news cycle. Isn't that something? It's remarkable. It's remarkable how we've normalized it. And the only thing I can come to is it must be, even though the media, quote unquote, the news media, doesn't have the reach that it once had, they somehow seem to be setting the agenda for our ADD nation. Even though they're not reaching more than 500,000 people in an evening? I don't know. I don't know how else to explain this. It's clear that in isolation, this is a really big deal. This is a really big deal in isolation. But yet, in totality, it seems to be just yet another day. And I'm struggling to really wrap my head around that and where we go after this.
Stop it.
Repeat that again.
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
August 15th, 2016.
I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40.
And now we know the FBI continued to pay Christopher Steele's work on the dossier. So they're paying for work on the dossier. They have people in high-level positions conspiring to prevent Trump from winning office. And this is just okay?
That was Republican Congressman Darrell Issa questioning anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok a couple of weeks ago during a joint House committee hearing last month. Meanwhile, newly released emails are showing that Strzok wanted to keep his security clearance and other FBI powers as he transitioned away from the FBI and to the Robert Mueller Russia investigation.
Pausing right here because this is actually the reason I'm playing this clip. It has now, thanks to Judicial Watch, come to light that Peter Strzok had some hiring demands. So probably many of you in our audience, when you've got a new job, maybe you've been fortunate enough to say, all right, I will come work for you, but you got to buy me a nice laptop. Or I'll come work for you, but I have to have a standing desk. Maybe you've been able to have a requirement. Well, Peter had some requirements. Peter had some requirements that didn't really seem to match up with his new roles, which gave him unprecedented access to information that he probably shouldn't have had access to anymore, but it was part of his hiring demands.
Congressman Darrell Issa joins me right now to talk more about that. He is a member of the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Foreign Affairs Committees. And Congressman, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for teeing it up with the fact that the more we know about Peter Strzok, the more we need to know more.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to ask you. I mean, I want to ask you where your investigation stands right now. But first, what about this idea that Peter Strzok did not want to give up his security clearances? A moment ago, I was talking to Congressman Peter King about this revolving door about how security clearances perpetuate top-level corruption in the United States because they're using their security clearances as their bona fides to get a new job, and then they're using that job to actually lash out at President Trump if they don't agree with him.
Well, exactly. And this isn't new. At the end of the Clinton administration, we had people showing up and putting classified documents into their clothes and walking out with one-of-a-kind documents because they still had access. This is a problem. In the case of Peter Strzok, what was interesting was he didn't just want to keep his clearance. He wanted to keep, to use a term, special powers that even the Speaker of the House doesn't have, issuing national security letters, meaning doing investigations without the normal protections of a court order, and the ability to declassify documents selectively, meaning to create an environment in which you could leak something and say it isn't classified because you've declassified it. For Mueller, these were special powers that no one understood he had, and Peter brought to the fight, if you will.
You understand what he's saying there, right? You understand what he's saying is, these are my special qualifications that make me a great candidate for you, Bob. I can do these things for you, Bob, that other people can't do. And you think, well, it doesn't work like that? That's exactly how it fucking works. Don't be naive. That's exactly how it works. Your level of clearance and who you know in the government, your connections, your network, that's what makes you valuable at these levels. That's what they hire you on. They don't hire you on the work you do. You don't do any work. They don't hire you on that. You know that. Think about it for a second. They hire you on your connections. They hire you on your clearance. They hire you on who you're friends with. And they have to be savvy to survive in this government. If you're going to be Bob Mueller and you're going to be in this shit for the better half of your life, you know how to navigate this stuff. You know what makes people valuable. And if he didn't, it would be negligent. If he didn't, he would be stupid. So which one is it? It's either he's actively participating in this corrupt system and hiring people based on their access and clearance and their ability to leak and their willingness to participate. Or, which is, in my opinion, worse, if you think about it, they're so inept and they're so out of touch that they don't understand this is how it works. Is that who you want investigating Russia collusion? No. You want somebody who's savvy, who knows how to navigate DC, who knows how to get what he wants. Well, this is what you get. Shit in, shit out, everybody. That's how it works. And it reminds me of Bob Mueller during the 9/11 investigation. Same exact situation. Shit in, shit out. And now here we have Bob again. I can't wait for these guys to die. All right, well, speaking of people dying, I can't believe I just used that transition. The booze must finally be kicking in. Speaking of people dying, the Las Vegas police have good news. They've wrapped up their case on the Vegas shooter, and they've honed in on the motivation. I won't spoil it for you.
Well, let's go to our correspondent, Jonathan Hunt, who's in our West Coast newsroom with the details of this report. Jonathan?
Good evening, Harris. For those who lost loved ones or who survived that terrible traumatic night, it is a disappointing end to a 10-month investigation that has left us no closer to uncovering a motivation for the massacre. Paddock opened fire, as you said, from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, killing 58 people attending that concert. He had spent several days bringing in an arsenal of weapons and ammunition to the hotel, but as seen on this security camera footage, nothing about his luggage caused alarm among hotel employees. And while he had complained to friends about feeling constantly in pain or fatigued, and his doctor described him as, quote, odd and possibly bipolar, nothing about his behavior raised any red flags.
By all accounts, Stephen Paddock was an unremarkable man
whose movements leading up to October 1st didn't raise any suspicion.
The exact kind of person you'd want trafficking guns to ISIS. I mean, I'm just saying.
An interview with his doctor indicated signs of a troubled mind, but no troubling behavior that would trigger a call to law enforcement.
Again, the ideal person to run guns. I'm just saying.
Paddock was a high-stakes gambler whose bank balance had dropped from $2 million in 2015 to $500,000 by September 2017.
Oh, that's rough. Only $600,000 in that account. Oh, man. That's rough, man. That's like hard times, you know? When you've only got $600,000 in change sitting around, you know, you just sit around laying around at night thinking, should I buy a car in cash or should I finance it?
He had paid $600,000 to casinos, $170,000 to credit card companies, and had spent $95,000 on weapons and ammunition.
Oh, that's because he was washing his money in the casinos. He was spending $170,000 on credit card companies because he could afford it, and $95,000 on weapons because he was going to turn around and sell it for $300,000.
The report found Paddock acted alone. No suicide note or manifesto was found. There was no evidence of radicalization or links to any terrorist organization.
No, he was just pissed about the end of a really good contract, and he was a crazy son of a bitch who was willing to sell guns to terrorists, and so he made those sons of bitches pay who were no longer paying him.
The sheriff, by the way, also said today it was hard for him to even say the shooter's name during the press conference, and he does not intend to do so again.
Oh, it's easy. It's just CIA. No, I don't actually. No, he was just a customer. Yikes! I've really stepped in on that one. I've stepped in it. Can I defer? Can we defer our hate for a moment? Can we put just to defer a moment? Let's put our hate on Giuliani. So that horrible intro is the setup to what I think will eventually grow. This is a little Red Book prediction. I expect by Christmas we will have a Judge Napolitano show again on Fox. And this is them beginning the groundworks of getting it ready. And the Judge's show is coming back. Now, if you remember, when Unfilter started for maybe about a year into Unfilter's run, I'm going to say, the Judge had his own television show on Fox. And then one day, he said some stuff. And they had to fire him. And then over the years, over the last, I'd say 3 years, he's kind of worked his way back in because he kind of knows what he's talking about, and it doesn't hurt that Donald Trump likes him personally. So Fox has kind of changed their opinion a bit. Plus, there's been leadership changes at Fox as well. And so my Red Book prediction, my last perhaps Red Book prediction, is Judge is going to get his own show before December of this year. That's my I could be wrong. These things do take a while, but my theory is this is already in the works, and these types of really overproduced little segments with the Judge on his own are them preparing in the background.
Hi, Judge Andrew Napolitano here, and you were on Freedom Watch with my good friend and colleague from the mountains of West Virginia, Fox News digital politics editor Chris Stirewalt. Chris, do you get the sense that Rudy Giuliani is playing over his head in the defense of the president, so much so that he might actually be putting the president in jeopardy with these wild, maniacal, disjointed explanations and personal attacks on Michael Cohen, who's probably going to be a government witness?
Well, there's all kinds of lawyers in this world, and you've seen them all in your courtroom. And what we're witnessing here is people say, we don't want to try this case in public. These are lawyers trying a case in public, right? You have, in the court of public opinion, you've got Giuliani doing battle not just with Cohen, but with Cohen's mouthpiece, who is a veteran of all of this stuff, Lanny Davis, who worked for the Clintons in the thick of all of that. And they're trying to box each other out. And then you've got Michael Avenatti zinging in here and there to do battle with these folks. And it does all look like a mess. And it would all give, maybe put it this way, for the rest of America, this is sort of a taste of what you get to read in the New York Post every day about the wild, woolly world of New York jurisprudence.
Do you get the sense that Gabe Sherman's piece in Vanity Fair this morning is correct? General Kelly is furious at this and wants the president to fire Rudy. That's the president's chief of staff. Don McGahn, the chief White House counsel, furious at Rudy and wants the president to fire him. Is that stuff likely true?
Look, I don't ever put too much stock into palace intrigue stories, but I have to say, on this case, that would comport to the things that are available for public inspection. And I would also say that anytime you have a White House under siege, and this is very much a White House under siege in the same way in the summer of 1973, in the same way as 1997. This is a White House under siege, and it's hard enough to execute the basic functions of the office when you are under siege that way. But Trump and Giuliani are fighting on multiple fronts. Instead of being focused on the Mueller probe, which is really kicking into the final and terminal phase now, they are also looking at the squabble with the president's former lawyer and the women that he allegedly paid off and all of that stuff, which is a further distraction from a distraction.
That is a great point. Think about this for a second. Imagine like Clinton in office. This is a good exercise, right? Clinton being distracted by Monica Lewinsky. That's like a massive thing. The PR around that, the legal stuff around that, that's massive. But Trump's right now dealing with the porn star stuff, the Cohen stuff, the Manafort stuff, and the Russia investigation. Like, when you think about it, you really think of the Russia investigation as the main thing. He's like the main distraction, but it's all that shit. He is juggling all of that stuff that has to be distracting for the president.
Do you think that there might be a method to the president's madness? And I use the word madness lowercase, with respect to the tweet earlier today. I want Attorney General Jeff Sessions to shut down this investigation. Now, he knows that tweet is not going to produce the result that he wants. He also knows that if he wants that result and is willing to take the extraordinary backlash it will provoke, he can make that happen. So what does he hope to accomplish with that tweet?
Look, he is in a pickle. It's sort of like we heard all the folderol last week about the 11 Republicans calling for the impeachment of the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
And what gave the game away on that one, they didn't mention the president in it. The president has the power that he could release those documents. He could order those documents that they demand be released. But they don't go to him because in the end, people don't really want it out. What they want is the issue, and they want to talk, they want to fulminate, they want to keep the base attached. You know the old joke, you know what you do with your political base? You treat them like mushrooms. You keep them in the dark and you cover them with horse manure.
You know what? I got to say, if this is what the new show is going to be like, I might actually watch it. That's not bad. So Ben Jealous, one of the best names in politics, he does pretty good handling questions if he's a socialist until he kind of, and I quote, fucking loses it. And that's me waiting for Dragon Player. Oh, the last two clips of the overtime, and Dragon Player calls it quits early.
Office. Proud to be that person. I look
VLC to the rescue. So this has been Jealous.
Forward to winning this race, and I'm happy to take your questions.
He's looking forward to winning the race, and he's happy to take questions. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to skip ahead. He answers if he's a socialist in the most non-direct way possible, and then we go here to the end where the reporter asks him again, and he gives a bit more of a direct answer.
Investing in our small businesses by pushing everybody we can into Obamacare and doing whatever it takes to get a better deal on health care for the people of our state.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but do you identify with the term socialist?
Are you fucking kidding me? Is that a fine enough point? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Oops. Yeah, that's not how you do it. Nope. Now, I understand, as we wrap up the show here, some of you are going to have some extra time because the show can be kind of long, and you've got now a bit of a hole in your schedule until at least a community-inspired show launches, and so you might be wondering, what should I do? Now, the salesman in me would say, well, go listen to more Jupiter Broadcasting content, but I understand you're going to be distracted by a new game, a new enticing game called The News Hero. Oh, you didn't know about this? It's a game that's available right now, created by the members of NATO.
NATO's come up with its own way of teaching it to youngsters. The alliance has released a Facebook game called The News Hero. Players are supposed to learn how to separate truthful stories from the fake ones. And this is Sid Shurkin had tried her hand.
Welcome to NATO's new online weapon against misinformation. It's the News Hero.
I promised myself to report only the truth. Join me on my quest to filter the news.
Some of the headlines about the game might imply that its developers have a bone to pick with Russia. But on closer inspection, it seems it doesn't have that much Russian fake news to decipher. You might have thought that NATO's Latvia-based Strategic Communications Center of Excellence could dig up something better, especially given the lengths it went to last year trying to prove that Russian TV comedy was really an undercover propaganda machine. And of course, there's NATO's deep-seated suspicion of all things Russian.
We don't accept cyber propaganda.
We will not counter Russian propaganda with more propaganda.
We have to be able to counter disinformation with facts.
But in NATO's new virtual reality world, passion seems slightly more subdued. You enter a rather suspiciously empty and slow-paced newsroom.
I'm sure you'll enjoy that. I have nothing to say but thank you. I'll keep it short, I'll keep it sweet. I hope you will stay subscribed to our RSS feed. That's all I'll say. If you've enjoyed this show over the ages, do me the favor of staying subscribed. Unfilter.show/RSS. Thank you so much to everyone out there. And instead of saying, I'll see you next week, I'll see you on all of our other shows at JB. Thank you so much.